All right, folks, welcome to another Watch Your Story. Gourd is in the house. That's right. We're going to hang out with another fellow YouTuber who's got a lot of love for movies too. So it'll be kind of cool. Gourd, my friend, thanks for doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm always excited to talk shop, I guess, and
Yeah. Yeah. We'll
discuss
go a little
movies
bit
and
behind the
whatnot.
curtain, if you will, I guess, and start with why Gourd? Where did the Gourd thing come from? How did we end up there?
uh, okay, it's funny. My That was not the original name of my channel. It was okay. So originally, my brother and I were going to do a two-person show with one another, and it was called "See It Twice." And because it's a reference to our kind of personal philosophy about how we can't stand when people do movie reviews when they see something just once and they constantly are missing details and whatnot. And we think familiarity is good for a review. So right as we're getting started, he ends up meeting his future wife, and so it kind of kills the idea that we can do this together because they end up getting married a few months later, and we still joke with her about how she Yoko Ono'd us and whatnot. uh but uh,
Okay.
but she's great. I mean, she's great. But so we both go off, and I'm trying to figure out how to do my own thing. And as I'm attempting various styles to go about this, I was like, gosh, I'm having trouble doing this solo on camera and whatnot. And I had this kooky idea of like giving myself a fake companion. Like I was a big Craig Ferguson fan, and I loved his little interactions with Jeff the robot. And I came up with this idea of a pumpkin that I would voice it, and I would just record that dialogue and do a little back and forth there. Couldn't quite get it to work that way, but as I actually eventually started my channel, which this was quite a bit later, I I didn't like using the name "See It Twice" as a title for the actual channel. I need more of a personal moniker to give myself, and I've always found it annoying when people call themselves or other people a God King. I mean, I find it kind
Okay.
of blasphemous, but uh, I have this pumpkin sitting here, and I was like, it just kind of came to me, this idea of like the Gourd King.
Ah.
And I thought, okay, that's actually kind of funny. And I started to think about all the various little ways you could manipulate that word and mess around with it, do puns and stuff, which that's something I'm pretty well known for doing. And but also give people a different word they could use instead of constantly saying God, using his name in vain. So it's like it has that kind of dual purpose of being a pun, but also a way of steering clear of uh saying God's name in vain. It's like, see, I'm getting in your head and I'm trying to get you to stop blaspheming, people.
I like that. I like that a lot. And it's very clearly a little, I mean, you've referenced it twice a little bit about your faith too, because that's something you kind of have on your sleeve a little bit.
Hmm.
How was that? I mean, I don't know that we write down necessarily first principles, but how important was it to make sure that you had sort of a channel and videos and stuff that aligned to your faith and what your beliefs were?
What's funny, I was actually watching some of your interviews with a couple of people, Vex, the Cannolis, all them, and I don't remember if it came up with them or I'm trying to remember the fellow's name who does the puppets, who's a pastor.
Oh,
But
right.
I
Yep.
I heard you bring up that you all liked the idea of doing a channel to where if if a kid was found by his or her parents watching their stuff, that they wouldn't freak out. It's like, oh, listen to all that language and stuff like that. And granted, I tell some jokes that are a bit edgy and whatnot, and there are certain topics I don't shy away from, but I keep profanity out of my jokes. I even try to steer clear of more lewd jokes as much as I can on the actual videos and whatnot. Uh, but yeah, I liked the idea of doing family friendly content, which was still really funny. Uh, or in a case of a review, I guess informative without losing the emotion, without losing kind of the bite of like the humor of the jokes and whatnot. But yeah, that was always important to me. It's like I'm not necessarily trying to preach to people,
Mhm.
but I'm also not hiding, that aspect of who I am. And I even probably I think my first comment I ever got on a video was I made one reference to the Bible in an Avatar video, and someone got irritated by it. But I was like, that's fine. That's okay. I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you on sort of that philosophy too. Like I just kind of refer to it as like a PG-13 approach to things.
Mhm.
I'm not here to just swinging a hammer, making a big issue about things, or really doing a lot of massive edits or things like that. I've only run into really a couple of things where there would be issues, and if I would have maybe a certain person back, I'd have to we'd have to have a little conversation ahead of time, like about watch your language or watch your innuendo or that kind of thing. But for the most part, I find most people pretty agreeable. Your
Mhm.
house, your rules, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, do you do you find that that's? I mean, I said last time I think I was asked with Ironcaster about one of the most surprising elements to doing this. Was how welcoming and how fast the friendship circle grew for me. How's that been for you?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, there's occasionally times where, I'll, because I can be very blunt about what I think on various issues, and I'm obviously coming from the perspective of biblical Christianity, and I'm like, so I'm well aware that some of my thoughts on a matter are could come off as abrasive or harsh, and it's like because the Bible tends to uh, go very much against man's wishes and his what we like to do a lot of the time. So I know sometimes when I say things that there's a good chance that it could rub people the wrong way, but uh I'm always trying to steer the conversation towards like, look, this it's not me trying to attack you because I'm saying what I think is absolutely true. And for the most part, people are pretty accepting of that. I think they know I'm coming from a place of good faith where I'm not coming at them. And plus, I think I'm good at pointing out to people. It's like, look, if you're asking me to accept you, well, then that's a two-way street. It's like
Mm,
I fully admit that some of what I believe is going to come off as disagreeable, to certain people. That's fine. If you're holding to that principle, then you can extend the same courtesy to me. And most of the time, people are like, yeah, yeah, that's true, that's fine. But yeah, for the most part, I haven't really run into that with fellow creators. I guess I've been very fortunate and very blessed to meet some really really awesome people. Uh, and ones that they'll actually listen to you. That
mhm.
will listen to what you have to say, whether they agree with you or not. It's been pretty awesome in that regard.
Yeah, I find them very, very welcoming. So let me flip the coin over because I have to completely agree with you, but I will say I have a harder time. I get a lot of judgment privately, folks. For those of you who don't know, where it's not in the comment section, because a lot of these folks are Facebook people or they're church and friends of the family or friends of the church people. They're upset if I do a video on Deadpool, or they'll be upset that I'll cover a Halloween rated R movie or something. That do you run in a little bit of that sort of back and forth and battle and struggle as well?
Occasionally I've gotten questions about that kind of thing,
Mhm.
and there probably are movies and topics that I would be a little more reticent to approaching. I guess it's in terms of like certain kinds of movies. I definitely don't have any movie approach where I'll talk about any movie or even that I'll see any movie. But I occasionally will get questions, but nothing too bad yet. I mean, granted, I'm not like a super popular channel as far as my movie stuff goes, but yeah, I haven't run into a ton of that just yet because I mean, it might be the fact that I haven't covered a ton of like R-rated movies
Hmm.
that I can think of, except maybe on my live show. But uh, I guess the only pushback I get occasionally is maybe from family. I'll get a few questions here and there from them, but they're mostly like, "Okay, okay." They
Yeah.
listen to my reasons for talking about it, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense."
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like the pushback can come from different angles, and it just is really just kind of a fascinating thing to try to navigate ourselves through. And I couldn't agree more with you as well when it comes to like Halloween movies would be a great example where a
Mhm.
lot of the super spiritual type possession films and things of that nature, I have no desire if I've seen them and to revisit something like that or to really go out of my way to watch them. I just don't subject myself to those things. That is my
Mhm.
personal thing. I have no ill will to other people doing their thing. Do your thing. That's part of what makes this platform its thing is to do your thing.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
do.
and I would say probably the next video I'm doing actually is probably most the most R-rated movie I've done. Granted, the video's completely comedic in its approach. It's more of a satirical review than an actual review. But the movie itself is like extremely violent and stuff. So it's definitely not a movie for kids. And even when I'm obviously be blocking out the more violent stuff to avoid any issues with YouTube, but it'll be pretty apparent, just how grotesque it is. Uh, but yeah, I like listening to people's takes on various stuff. Granted, there are some movies where I'm like, I have no interest in this. I mean, maybe this person will have something funny to say, but um, there are some things that are just like, nah, I'm not touching that. It's like I don't even necessarily need to hear about it. It's like I kind of know going. It's like that's not for me.
Yeah, I think that that's again part of this too. How did you decide to be? I mean, you really come with like a lot of, I want to say, just a wealth of knowledge. You come from a great perspective of things. Something I think even when I think we were on Quiet Place together, right, over on MMM.
I believe so. Yeah,
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 and we really, yeah, I don't know about your take on it, but it was really fascinating to me because you guys carried on long after I could stay on the channel, and I sounded very pro Quiet Place. Like I treated it like a dumb fun movie, and
mhm,
everyone was really coming at it with a lot more harsh criticisms. At the end of the day, we kind of all scored it pretty midland.
yeah.
I was really fascinated by that. Like it's just funny how our conversations about something can navigate in a certain way, but then the scores or rewatchability factors. But what kind of drew you into, I want to say, being a critic, but technically that's a lot of what you do.
Yeah, it's funny because when I came into, I guess when I started to watch like other YouTube critics, like the first ones I watched, it's funny when I look back at them, I see some of their content, I'm like, why did I ever enjoy that? I don't necessarily want to name names or point out certain people, but I mean, they're pretty popular, and a lot of people have pointed out what's wrong with their version of criticism before. But when I started to discover creators like Mauler, Little Platoon, and all those, I liked their approach a lot because it was more in line with uh, how I wanted to review a film. But at the same time, I've never really had that much of a difficulty with separating what I think objectively versus what I see objectively against what I feel about a movie. I
Mm,
can make a pretty clear distinction between how I feel about a movie and what I see that's right and wrong with it. So, like a movie like A Quiet Place, I can fully admit I enjoy watching it. I appreciate what they were going for, and I think as far as my viewing experience is concerned, I can watch that movie and have a decent time while at the same time understanding that it has quite a few issues, with its internal logic, and that if they had fixed this here or that there, it probably would have been a much, much better
mm,
film.
sure.
Uh, and I like taking that approach because for one thing, I find it kind of fascinating that I see so many people having difficulty doing that. That if you start criticizing the movie, it's like, oh, why do you got to say this and this and this? Why do you got to look at this? Why can't you just have fun? It's like I can. It's just I can do both at the same time.
Mhm.
And I look at it as a way of trying to get people who are just about what they feel, understanding that there's more to it than what you feel. It's like, I mean, that's great if you had a good time watching it, but you can actually still see that a movie has issues, despite what you feel. That's your subjective experience. That's great. That's wonderful. Not trying to take that away, but if you fix this here and that there, you actually probably would have enjoyed the movie quite a bit more. And it's
I
good to ask for and demand those things sometimes.
I'd go even a step further. I'm gonna be a little meaner than you. I think a lot of people just are the NPC thing. It's like they
Oh, yeah.
turning the brain off thing is literally how they approach most of things. And I remember like I had a pretty close friend at work and loved Guardians Galaxy 3. I mean, just
Mhm.
and I'm like, so what did you think about this? And we just kind of went down the list of, let's say, 3 to 5 easy softballs of just how the movie wastes your time. They have massive segments of the film that don't make any sense and they contradict themselves, or they massively contradict previous films. And it took a couple days, and then I saw the person again there. Yeah, I know what you're saying now. I see that now. I see that now. I see that now. Because I'm a big fan of, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So
Mhm.
part of my approach to the NPCs is if I can enlighten at least where there are more flaws, then I can turn them into better educated viewers to at least have fun and a critical eye, if that makes sense. And then they
Sure.
can therefore have a better appreciation for the really good and the great. Because I think that's the problem we're at now. Without the critical eye, this NPC, and this emotional approach to everything, it's taking the spotlight off of the really great and really good. That makes sense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I always kind of chuckle inwardly when I see people posting a movie that has like a bad critic score but a great audience rating or something like that, and I'm like, that doesn't mean a ton to me because there's a lot of movie with fantastic audience ratings that are really bad. It's like
Mhm.
audiences aren't all I mean, like, audiences collectively are not a great judge of, whether a movie is good or bad. I think they probably do a better job when something is genuinely bad, but there's a lot of good movies that have bad audience ratings. There's movies that get wildly underrated because of various factors. There was a movie that came out a couple of years ago called Underwater that had Kristen Stewart. She had a shaved head. It was kind of blonde. She looked, you know, I think what most people probably looked at her and thought, oh, she looks really feminist, so the movie's probably going to be terrible. And it wasn't an overly complex film, but I watched it and I was like, no, this is actually a really good movie. I'm kind of sad that this did so poorly and nobody talks about it. It's actually really good. And then conversely, you see something like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, or, probably my hottest take that I've ever had on a show is probably my take on Lethal Weapon 2.
Hmm.
Because I was on MMM and I had never seen Lethal Weapon 2, was always a big fan of the first one. And I watched it the day before the show and I was like, huh, there's like right from the outset, I was like kind of noticing some problems with it. And it just kind of progressed throughout the movie. And I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this again tomorrow because maybe I'm just missing details that will fix some of this stuff. But I'm going to take notes either way because if I'm right, and I think I'm right, this is actually kind of a bad movie. I get what people like about it, but I think this might be a really bad film. And I started to take notes watching it the second time, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna be on Cannoli's show, and I'm pretty sure everybody there really likes it. And I when we started tweeting out that the show was gonna be on, I just kind of subtly uh, alluded to that I might be the lone person who thinks it's a bad movie.
There
I
you
think
go.
I retweeted him. I said, "Come see if I'm welcome on MMM again after tonight." And he was like, "Oh no, no!" It's like we'll talk about it. And
Yeah.
they were like, Do you really not like this?" I was like, "It's bad, guys." And I've got a lot of reasons why, but it was actually one of the best times I've ever had on that show because they're really good people. I mean, we got a lot of laughs. I think I got my points across well, but I don't mind going into the lion's den, so to speak, with the hot take because I try to shore up why I think what I think with what I've actually seen, and I take a lot of notes and say,
Right.
hey, I know you all may think this is good, but here's why it could have been a lot better.
In
And then, of
this,
course, when she told us what the original screenplay was going to be, we were like, oh, that actually does sound a lot better.
hmm. Yeah, I find like a major contradiction, like in scorings and reactions and things like that. Because I think the
Hmm.
audience score for me tends to be a barometer of, like you said, an emotional connection to a film, like an emotional reaction to a film, or
Yeah.
rather than a critical eye. But then I think the problem with the critic score, and again, been in the room with the critics for many, many years, it feels like a high school clique, like it's really bad, and they have
Yeah.
their own. They want to pretend they don't have their own set of biases, particularly political biases and
Hmm.
agendas, and it taints their scores. So I tend to highlight the scores when I find it's radically out of alignment to an experience. I want to get your opinion on one. I don't know. Have you seen Hillbilly Elegy?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
I'm aware of some of the elements to, like I know that's JD Vance had
It's
written
his
the book, but
biography. Yeah.
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 I mean, I didn't know much about that guy before recently, uh, and really until that movie came out. But yeah, I know a lot of conservatives were like, "Oh, this is really good." A lot of other people were like, it's kind of nothing special." Um, I didn't get a chance to watch the movie myself, so I don't know what I would think of it. I'd be willing to watch it to find out, but
Yeah, that's fine. Let me
uh,
let me ask you about others that are to me it's very similar because it's a very similar thing with um critics came at that movie very similar to they come at a lot of, I'll say, faith-based film or Christian films
sure.
that are about someone's life. And
Mhm.
what I find is a lot of the criticisms tend to drift more into it's not believable.
Mm.
rather than the facts of the film. So, for instance, um, let me think about like Woodlawn is one that comes to mind. It's Tony Nathan. He's a football player, and it's just a little journey film. It's just this is what they went through. It's a little story. Is it sort of like trumped up for Hollywood? Yes, they all kind of are. Like their own biography. Like we're supposed to do backflips over J. Edgar, the movie, and we're supposed to do backflips over Public Enemies, the John Dillinger film, things like that. It's like, well, there are also moments where you guys have made major creative differences, creative. Okay, so I don't have a problem trying to step back and try to be a little more objective.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the audience scores tend to reflect more of like that emotional connection to something. And I think Hillbilly Elegy kind of represents the film does a great, Ron Howard, I thought did a great job of at least trying to convey elements of the book and give you a very emotional journey that is kind of a pick yourself up by the bootstraps kind of thing. And then, but
Yeah.
I think between the time of the book to the movie to the release, it become politicized.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't agree more about that discrepancy and that gauging of that discrepancy is a fascinating sort of like thermometer, a barometer of where we're at on some of the cultural zeitgeist of things, for sure.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating also is if you look at movies that came out, like quite a while back. Like certain movies that I would cover back when I was doing my live show that were a little older, kind of predated, sites like Rotten Tomatoes, but obviously have gotten rated since then. Like a movie like Forrest Gump, for example. If you go to Rotten Tomatoes, I think its audience score somewhere in the 70s, high 70s maybe. The Incredibles, which came out in the early 2000s, is like I think in the 80s, and I find that really interesting because I'm like, okay, I can understand why those would have that score. I think that's actually a pretty solid representation of what most people think of those films. But if then you go to more modern movies that are far less popular, that have far less of an impact, but because Rotten Tomatoes is typically people are scoring on it in the immediate aftermath of having gone to the theater without actually thinking about it or seeing the movie multiple times, they're just gut reaction and everything. Like, the modern Deadpool is like a 97, 98% or whatever. And I'm like, do people really think this movie is going to have higher approval rating than something like The Incredibles or even Forrest
Mm.
Gump? And Forrest Gump's a movie that I actually have some issues with. I mean, I still really like it, but uh like, do people really think that that's a better movie or is going to be popular years and years from now? I sincerely doubt that. So I don't find the audience rating to be all that reliable. It's so immediate, it's so gut, uh, that
But I think that
I
the
don't see
problem
a lot
here
of.
too lies with Rotten Tomatoes, right? Because people think it's an actual score, right? And
No.
we've learned, of course, now it's like the percent of people who give it a 60 or more.
Mhm,
And I'm like, wait, okay, hold on. So the score is a percent of how many people think it's a 3 out of 5.
mhm.
Okay. When I learned that, my whole Rotten Tomatoes just thing collapsed on itself for me. Like I don't have any desire to like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's fine
Oh,
for an
yeah.
extreme. I like looking at it from an extreme point of view, like the example I gave where it's like, it's 20 and 80 or something like, it's like a complete disparaging one way or the other. Uh, what is a good barometer for you then? I mean, because IMDb's kind of been saturated because if you go to the C curve, right? So many people mark things tens and ones. It's
Mhm.
absurd. They don't, of course, recalibrate. I wish they would remodify their formula so we could just take out or give some sort of weight to get rid of some of that noise. But I don't know what they would
Yeah,
do there.
it's
But yeah,
I mean, plus you could peruse their top 250 and it's a bit. I mean, I think a lot of the movies they have in there are fine, but there's a lot of films in their top 250 you're like, how is this considered one of the best movies of all time? It's not even good. But like when I see Avengers Endgame in IMDb's top 250, I'm like, "Oh,
yeah,
that's guys."
that's
I mean, I get that
audience.
it was popular and it was
Yeah,
fun, but
audience popular. That's a populist push, right? Because
right.
it being above Infinity War would be an absurd conversation, right? It's like
Yeah.
just things like that. Yeah. Uh,
But yeah, I would say, I mean, for one thing, the only scoring system I can think of that's worse than Rotten Tomatoes is probably that Cinescore rating. Like that I have no idea how they come up with those grades. Like, oh, this one's getting an out of theater grade of an A minus. So it's like, how's that? I don't get how they come to that
yeah,
at
I
all.
never
It's
looked at
so
that one.
vague. But I would say Metacritic's probably the closest thing I can think of to a pretty good one. I think IMDb for most movies actually is okay as long as the movie's not super popular. I tend to think most people are okay with scoring movies as long as it's not one of the tentpole films. Uh, Although there's plenty of movies they get wildly wrong too, even if they're not popular. But I would say Metacritic's uh, the best one, and even it's not necessarily great. I mean, sometimes I'll look at a score for a certain movie and be like, how is it so low or how is it so high? But it's I generally speaking, I'll hear what people are saying about it. I'll listen to what some of my friends are saying that I trust their opinion, but for the most part, I'm going into a movie just like, okay, I'm gonna divorce myself from what everybody else is saying and just I'll I'll I'm comfortable enough with my own brain to where it's like, I can figure out what I think of this. I'll be
All
good.
right. Let's go back to one of the things that you said, which puts us in complete contrast with one another. You like to be a critic who's seen things twice, see it twice philosophy, right? You like that. Because I come from a critic background where a lot of times you see a movie ahead of time, it comes out on Thursday, got to do your review. So I'm used to a see it and do the review kind of guy. And I have kind of incorporated a lot of that in my YouTube, where a lot of my responses is like a visceral response. Like it's probably one of the biggest valid negative criticisms against my channel would be, you obviously don't use a script, you ramble, it's emotional, you leave parts out. Blah, blah, blah. Fair enough, because I'm giving you a visceral response. I wanted your take on those two philosophies and why you like your approach of seeing it twice over the other.
Well, I don't really necessarily have a problem with a person reacting after a single viewing. I think that's fine. And there are some people who are so good at recalling details of movies after one viewing. I admire the heck out of that if you can pull that off. I can't. I have attempted it before and to very little success. I'm kind of just letting the movie hit me the first time, but I've found that there are gobs and gobs of times where I'll see a movie one time and I'll think one thing, whether it be, great like or great dislike, and then go back again and watch it be like, huh, this is actually a different experience from that first time. Avengers Endgame's kind of a good example. The first time I watched it, I was emotionally satisfied, like a ton of people were. And it wasn't until I kind of that second and third view, I was like, this okay. Now I'm seeing a lot of the issues that I wasn't paying attention to before. So I guess for me, it's kind of the difference between a review and a reaction. And I
Mm.
I like videos that do make the distinction. And as long as they're entertaining and they're, I guess, in their own way informative, I don't have any issue with them. But it's more just about, it's like, okay, what are you telling me? Are you telling me that this is just my reaction to it? This is what I think and feel after the first watch, and here are the things I remember, blah, blah, blah. All that's fine. As long as it's done honestly and in good faith, I don't have an issue with it.
Mm.
But I find that at least most people I see videos from, when they're saying they're doing a review and it's after one viewing, they're missing so much and they're not even really saying anything uh, about the actual content of the film or how well it achieves its goals. And I'm like, why are you calling this a review in the first place? Because it's not really reviewing anything. You're just telling me what you think of the surface level elements to it. That doesn't tell me a ton. That just says it was attempting to go for this, so I like it. It's like, okay, but is it written well? Is it consistent? Uh, is the continuity working? Do they follow their own rules? Because that gets glossed over so often. And granted, if someone can, after one viewing, pull off telling me that kind of stuff and can catch all that, I think that's amazing. Good on you. But I know for me, I have a really hard time doing that after just one viewing, because it's like it's a first impression. It's like meeting
Mm.
someone for the first time. You may think one thing of them, but you get to know it a little more. It's like, it's not what I previously thought, or maybe it's a little better than I thought. Maybe it's a little worse. I have a number of movies that I used to like that I started to dislike after multiple viewings, and a number that went the other way. I'm always happy when I rewatch something and like, oh, I didn't like this before. I kind of think it's pretty cool now.
Yeah, grew on me. It grew on me.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like appropriate. We should have a We should have a PSA. So all of you out there who've watched my videos and feel like that I've shortchanged you by calling it a review when it is seriously not a review, I don't really apologize. It just is what it is, and I am who I am. And I've been doing that for so many years that I don't really unwire. I just happen to do it through a camera, and I don't write it down and have some long written review that I used to actually have to do. And I enjoy the freedom of just doing this. So if you want the more detailed analysis from someone who will see it twice, he's going to be your guy. So
Well,
there
and
you go.
by the
Another
way,
reason to have him here. Another reason to have him here. So you guys will know where else to get another perspective from. So go ahead.
well, and by the I do think there are plenty of movies that when you see them the first time, you can have a really good beat on if it's good or bad. I mean, some movies are just obviously good and some movies are just obviously bad. But I do think there are those films that uh I think particularly when you're finding yourself in great contrast to a lot of other people, that might be a good indicator that, maybe there's something that you're not picking up on.
Oh,
Uh,
sure. Yeah, I got you.
I think that could always be a good indicator. Sometimes it's just, sometimes I'll watch a movie and I'll just be in the wrong mood for it. I'll start watching
Hmm.
it and I'll be like, huh, okay, I didn't really enjoy it, but it's because I was feeling a certain way going in and I just wasn't in the right place for it. And then I'll go back and I was like, oh no, okay, that was actually really good. I just wasn't the right time.
What's a admittedly bad movie that you like? You're like, if
Oh
you
gosh.
scored the movie, this is going to be, I use a 5-star system, but so for me, this is like the 2-star films, like 2 out of 5. I know they've got, maybe they don't date well. They've got issues. It's just a film. It's fine. And it can be dumb fun. Like I just redid Twister. I'm still not sure I want to give Twister a 2 though. I think I enjoy Twister more than that, but
Oh yeah.
it's still like this, they're bad. There are some that are like considered not good films that I love or I like. Do you have any examples of a couple of those?
Lots. I mean, there are some movies that they're kind of obviously bad, but you kind of like them for they're so bad it's good quality, like The Room or Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. I mean, yeah, it's like I wouldn't score those movies high, but uh, they're fun because in part because of how goofy and bad they are.
Mm.
But probably the one I come back to because it's genuinely one of my like top 50 favorite movies. And yet I probably under no circumstances would call it a good movie is Once Upon a Time in Mexico. I adore that film. I have so much fun every time I watch it. I'm like, and the plot of that movie is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think it's necessarily its internal consistency is weird and there's so much going on that doesn't make a lot of sense. Uh I don't think it's necessarily trying to be in perfect continuity with the other Desperado films. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But yeah, it's like most people I talk to when you talk about the El Mariachi trilogy, they'll like one of the other two films more. And objectively, they very well may be better films. But I always come back to Once Upon a Time in Mexico. And I'm like, I have such a good time every time I see this. It's always been that since the first time I watched it, maybe I was like, oh, I love this. This is so
Right.
much fun. It's probably not even good, but I really enjoy it. There's other movies that like I know Annihilation has gotten a lot of ire for some of its internal logic not making sense. I still find that movie really fascinating. I get a lot out of every watching. Some people consider Blade Runner 2049 to be very dull and polarizing and not a good sequel to the first one, and it may not be. I still really like it a lot. I still have a good time every time I watch it. I still prefer the original, but yeah, I have quite a few movies that I kind of know inwardly. It's like, yeah, these aren't great movies, but
Yeah,
I
we
still
all
like
do.
them. I still enjoy them.
Yeah, yeah, cool. You mentioned how you started your channel with the whole see it twice philosophy and have another person, and obviously you do the live streams with King's Court and that kind of thing. How has it been for you to kind of evolve through, find your voice, and how has it changed more doing this for so long?
It's funny because I tend to constantly want to experiment with new things. I mean, uh like I have my meme channel, which is completely separate from the movie stuff, and that's just me messing around and editing and having goofy fun, and that's actually gone pretty well. But then I'll have movie stuff, and I know from the outset when I started with my early reviews, I knew within about 3 videos that I wasn't going to keep that format, that something was off, and I wasn't even fully sure what I could do. And then I did some more essay form videos that I actually liked a lot more. And I'm gonna continue doing those, at least in part, because I enjoy the heck out of dissecting a film. But I also wanted to find a more, loose, short form kind of comedic format, because I also love joke writing and stuff. And I was like, okay, how do you incorporate that into a movie video? And I only recently, I guess, kind of found an idea for a format that I was gonna use for that. But I feel like I'm still evolving in that way as far as the kind of content I make for my movie channel. Because there are some times where I'll watch a movie and I'm like, yeah, I really there's a lot that I would like to say about this one. So I'd like to do a video where I really go into it. I really dissect it for what's good or bad about it. Uh, but there's sometimes I'll watch something and be like, "Yeah, I don't have a lot of deep stuff to say, but I might still want to make something. So how do I do that?" And it's only been very recently that I found what I'd like to do with it. And I'm right now editing my first video of a new type where I very poorly explain a film and I'm just telling jokes throughout. It's completely it's like the silliest possible context I can think of for what's happening. That's going to be the new kind of short form format that I used, where
Yeah.
it's not a review at all. But
All right.
yeah, it's still a journey I feel like I'm on, where I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to go about my movie content.
Well, everything is in the description, folks. Make sure you're subbed, and you can check that out for yourself. So, um, how about MMM? You've been a regular guest for a while now. You're kind of be a permanent fixture there, so it's kind of cool to do that. Talk a little bit about joining MMM.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember the very first show I did there, and uh right after the end of that was for Mission Impossible Fallout, and then right after that, they were like, "Hey, we're gonna be doing Titanic, etcetera. Would you wanna do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, it'd be great." And between those 2 shows, I got invited on to another one, like, kind of they're like, "Hey, I know it's short notice, but, uh, we need someone for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles." Like, "Yeah, sure." And there would just be these occasional times where Cannoli would be like, "Hey, if you're available, can you come on here?" And I was finding that I was often getting invited on just I was kind of pinch hitting for somebody else
Mm.
because I just happened to be available, and I like going on there a lot. I think that show is a lot of fun to be on. I love those people, and, it happened enough times to where and I part of me wonders if my joking suggestion of this is kind of what made it happen, but, it was it was the show I did before the last one where I just kinda offhandedly said, I was like, "Y'all might as well just make me a permanent co-host. I mean, I'm on here enough," but and it was basically I was joking about it because I literally was gonna be on every July show. It happened to
Mhm.
be that I was gonna be on every July show, and I was like, I kinda feel like I'm becoming the most common recurring guest. I was like, "Yeah, might as well just make me permanent." Just joking about that, and then Cannoli called me a couple of days later. He was like, "So would you actually like to be a permanent co-host?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, actually, that would be great because." They're some of my favorite people on this platform. I get along with all of them well. Cannoli, Vex, Whitey. It's like I love those guys. Always gotten along with them, even for similar reasons and for different reasons. And I have so much fun talking with them about stuff, especially whether it's we agree about a film or even we disagree about it. I have so much fun, so I couldn't think of a better fit to be on a live show because
Right.
I did my own for a while. I'm not as big a fan of hosting a live show as I am just being a part of it. Uh, so yeah, I was like, if I couldn't think of a better panel of fellow creators to be on than MMM, so I was really happy that they included me on that.
There you go. Despite his hot take on Lethal Weapon 2, folks, you can catch
Exactly.
Gorge regularly on Canoli's MMM Monday show. So you do have though you do the meme channel you mentioned briefly, and you do gaming and stuff like that. How are you balancing the 3 channels? What you want to do when you want to do it? Do you watch numbers? How do you kind of juggle all that?
The gaming channel is just pure leisure at this point. I mean, I probably at some point will do the occasional video if I ever get the inkling for it or get the itch for it, which I assume at some point I probably will, and I have some ideas of what I would do. But mostly I like just playing games and chatting with people while I do it. That's
Mm.
just me goofing around, and if I get the occasional sub or viewer, that's fun. That's fine. Uh The meme channel, gosh, that's been a weird one because I didn't expect much from that. I mostly was just occasionally like making little funny edits, about politics or things in the news, and adding kind of reactionary movie clips to them. Just creating video memes. And I started to separate the ones I had on my main channel into a meme channel, and for like several months was just occasionally re-uploading stuff here and there, and it just kind of slowly started to build. And then the last one I released, like literally the last piece of pre-prepared content I had, kind of made me think, oh, I might need to actually make a little bit more for this, because like the last thing I made was actually kind of popular, and I was like, like I had like 20 something thousand views, and I was like, okay, that's pretty good. And then I was like, well, my watch hours aren't very high on this, but I'm closing in on 500 subs. So maybe by the time I hit 1,000, I'll have enough hours. If I make something a little longer, if I make a couple of videos that maybe are a little lengthier, build
Mhm.
those up. And the very next thing I released, I can't even believe I have a number like this on any video, but the next one I made it 15 minutes. It was just a highlight reel with a few new edits, and it got 500,000 views and blew my channel up. Uh, for a period of time. I mean, granted, it's kind of slowed down since then, uh, but
Gourd the memer. There he is.
yeah,
That's
it
it.
was. I was like, oh, this is a thing, and I get a lot of great. I was getting tons of feedback on that video. People are like, "Oh, this is so good. This is so funny." I was like, "Is it?" I was just messing around. That was just having a bit of fun. Those videos are not difficult to make. It almost made me feel a little guilty. I was like, "This doesn't take that much work. This is just pulling clips and thinking, how would I react to this?" And adding a movie clip that mirrors that reaction. It's like, boom, there
Mhm.
you go. And just kind of do that a few times, got a video. It's easy.
I not
But
only think it's a good idea and it's easy that you have a knack for it. I think it's the kind of thing because I've taken this advice. I've done it with some of my shorts because I use an AI software to help me edit out the shorts. It kind of combines them and it does all the repurposing for you, and then you just go in and edit the short basically.
mhm,
Um, so I learned this from some of the big YouTubers. They'll just repost the same thing, and they'll just make modifications. They don't mean it's exactly the same thing, nor do I. It's like you go in, maybe it's a few seconds longer, a few seconds shorter, or you change the captions, or you change the overlay, and you make it a little bit new, but you can kind of keep putting it out there to find new people because the thing that you did, let's say you did 6 months ago, um, they have such a short lifespan. You know how YouTube is, right? So the
mhm,
expiration date on some of these things just don't go. But enough people liked it, you throw it back out there. And I think that you've got such a good routine, and as you continue to grow, you can repurpose things that you've even already done to kind of, oh, I wonder if I could just tweak this or make it an anthology piece. We add on another minute or two, or theme them up or whatever. I think
mhm.
it's been a great thing to watch you kind of evolve with that a little bit. And I have to admit, I'm just as guilty of just kind of smiling and also like shaking my head of the state of the world that we are in, my friend. It is both funny and sad at the same time.
It can be, yeah. And I'm just like, the whole purpose of the meme channel is just like, look, I know the world's a weird place. Uh, can be a little depressing, so let's try to laugh at it a little bit.
Indeed.
Laugh at it a bit along the way.
I would not be remiss if I wasn't fully transparent that I reached out to some of our fellow YouTube compatriots and asked for a couple of suggestions for questions or topics and things like that. And one that I got back, which is really, really fascinating to me, was a little bit about your home life and having a lot of adopted siblings and things like that. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of speak to that a little bit, that experience, because I think it's some of those things that a lot of us don't have much context for. And we just, I don't know, for lack of a better term, we find that fascinating.
Yeah, it's funny. I was the middle child growing up till I was about 15 or 16, and I think it was in 1998 that my parents came home. Well, my mom came home. She was like, your dad and I have been talking, and uh, we're thinking about adopting from China. And we were like, oh, okay, cool. It's like, that sounds pretty neat. Uh, and when you're a kid and like you're hearing that we're gonna do this very new thing, there's part of you that's gonna be a little skeptical because you understand this is a process, and you're like, okay, we'll see if we actually follow through with this. And but over the course of the next few months, you're like, okay, we're really doing this. That's awesome. And we were doing certain things to like raise money, like even like going like door to door selling candy, like to raise money for it and stuff like that. Uh very different time. It's funny thinking about that now. We probably would go about that completely different, but uh yeah, and then it finally happened, and we go to the airport and they bring this little child. And it's funny, is the first adoption was the only one that the child was picked for us. Like, they, like, 6 weeks before they're to go to China, they send it, like, okay, this is a picture of the child that we've selected. Is this okay, or do we have
Mm.
to delay this and pick another? And we were all like, oh, no, no, no. I mean, that's my sister Isabel. It's like, oh, she was adorable. She was absolutely adorable. We were like, yeah, absolutely, this is great. And they bring her home, and it's a little surreal, but we took to it very quickly. And then, like, we did it again, and that was my sister Lily. Then did it again with
How old are they
Hannah,
when
and
how old were they at the point of adoption, and how old are they now, if you don't mind me asking?
Isabel was about a year old. She was. It's funny, we actually started the adoption process before she was even born.
Hmm.
Um, but she was, I think, about 13 months old when we brought her home. Lily was about 3. Hannah was 4. I'm trying to think. Hannah might have been. I think Hannah was probably the oldest one. Um, and those 3 are the oldest of the adopted siblings, and they are 25 now, I think.
Wow.
Um, 2 of them are very recently married, which it's wild to think about that. But yeah, Lily just got married a few weeks ago. Hannah got married back in November. Really great guys they married. I was thrilled to death for them. Uh, then I think Annabeth was probably also about 3. Jonah was about, I think, maybe 2 or something like that. I think Micah was probably about 2 or 3 when we got them. Those 2 just graduated high school. Faith was the most unique one because she was adopted by another family. Uh, that my mom was, she was friends with the mother. I guess they had met in the process of one of our other adoptions, and things were not going well with that because Faith was, she had a biological mother that left her. She didn't grow up in an orphanage. She grew up with I guess, a foster mother. So when she got taken away from her and went to this American mother, she was very slow to get. I mean, she would not get close to the mother that had
Mm.
adopted her, and so it was causing
Right.
a lot. And Faith was very intelligent. I mean, for such a small child, she knew how to push buttons despite being very young. Uh, and granted, we didn't know her very well. We knew of her. We had been to their home and talked to them and whatnot. And I guess my mom's friends started to confide. It's like, I don't know if we're gonna finalize this adoption. It's causing a lot of issues. And my mom and my dad started talking. It's like, well, we don't like the idea of her going back into the system. And they started to ask, it's like, would you all be okay if we adopted Faith and brought her into our family? Maybe she would be integrated a little better. And I remember sitting down with my mom, talking to her, and I said, well, I have no issue with doing that, but 2 things. One, she's not gonna like you for probably a really long time because she's gone through, this would be 3 mothers she's gone through.
Yeah.
She's probably gonna hate your guts for a while because she's not gonna trust you. But if we are gonna adopt her, I really feel like you should break off your friendship with this woman because
Mm.
that's just gonna add to the confusion. I really don't think that's good for her. Uh, I'm all for it, but only if we're gonna do it this way. Uh,
Mhm.
that was something that I thought, would probably be best, and she agreed. My dad was like, "I think he's right." Um, and my whole thing when Faith's always been the most interesting one because of how unique it was. That's why I'm talking so much about it. But I know when we brought her in, my whole thing was, I'm just gonna treat her like she's just one of the other ones. I'm not gonna give her special treatment, one way or the other.
Oh, here he comes.
She will just be like the others. And she and I hit it off so well because of that. We got close immediately. Uh, I think she knew very quickly she could trust me. And Grace, she was only like 4, but like I said, Faith's always been really, really bright, really, really smart, quick to learn stuff. And yeah, she and I took to each other quickly. Her and my mom hated each other for a while. Like, probably the best thing they did was they finalized the adoption quickly. So I was like, okay, because once you finalize a foreign adoption,
Yeah.
that is final. Like, that's
Yeah.
actually more final than a biological child. Like, you're not separating that. And yeah, it took a while for them to start getting along, but that, finally worked out. But yeah, it's been quite the journey with each one, but it's great. I love my siblings to death. I absolutely love them to death. They're
So how many adopted? 'Cause I think I'm counting like 7.
7, yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm
wow.
all together, I'm one of 10.
10. That's amazing. I want anyone else out there, you guys in comments will let us know. I want to like have like the Gourd kids on, or at least the Gourd sisters, because I mean, dear Lord, it's gotta be just amazing to have stories behind the scenes on this guy. Holy cow, that would be the
One of
best.
my siblings just started a YouTube channel too.
Oh, that's
He's
great.
doing little video game edits and whatnot. I've been walking him through how to do stuff like that, and he's kind of just experimenting, but
Yeah.
he's yeah, he's having fun doing that. But
The
yeah.
Gourd bro. That's the best. The Gourd bros out there. Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, folks, make sure you're connected to Gourd. We'll put all the links in the description for you there, and connect to him. Movies, gaming, and the meme stuff. It's just a great. Just take a break and just have a chuckle or cringe, depending on your taste. I mean, it's
Mhm.
it is what it is. So, but thanks for doing this, brother. I've been closing out this year with a chance for the guests to ask me a question. So whatever it may be, feel free to throw it out there, and we'll go from there.
I'm curious, just what got you to do YouTube in the first place? Which interest was it? Was it movies? Was it comics? You've obviously got a lot of stuff
Yeah.
you're interested in, but
So now I started like in 2003, doing mostly website work, writing reviews, comic books mostly, but pop culture in general. You had like a weekly article you had to submit with like these different paragraphs on different topics. And then we had like summary things. We'd get together for like meetup type things. And
mhm.
it kind of worked pretty well for a while. On again, off again, life in the way, had kids, job changes, got a day job this whole time. And that kind of parlayed into other website work, other opportunities, writing other websites, some paid, not paid. And then ultimately met people who were more into like broadcasting and got into like some radio type stuff, which again, some paid, not paid. And I felt like I just kind of have a knack for a lot of that, especially at the time. And started producing our own shows, or we're doing our own websites. So it's been, as Ryan Roger Athey called it, the alternate media bubble, the alternate media that existed outside the framework of all this, and very much so. Like there were times where I've been like at odds with what we call mainstream media, like write an article that someone will steal from you, like they would just steal.
Mhm.
They don't give you credits. I've had stuff where they would send you press materials and you publish it, and then they copyright strike you, and you'll like take your stuff down and try to threaten you with lawsuits. And so this was something that, I say side hustle or not my primary business, but I'm talking about, one website was getting 1 million or 2 million views a month. So it was at the time pretty decent, got us into Google News, which got us more access to more things. Fast forward through years of doing different things, being, movie critic, and doing all these kinds of things on the side. And then once we got closer to COVID, it kind of got to the point where I'd kind of pulled back the reins on a lot of it. Had like a political news commentary type show we were doing, but with COVID, it just become not only a hassle, but there was also a lot of limitations on things you could or couldn't talk about. So once we came out of that, I kind of felt like, what was the point to a lot of it? And I wanted to just have fun. I was getting older, to be honest, I've been doing it. So
Yeah.
when I decided that we're just going to take pops and we're going to go all in on just pops. So a lot of the other stuff just completely went away, just immediately, just didn't go back, just didn't do it again. And literally over the last little over 2 years now of doing just pops, that's what I call it, the just pops era.
Mhm.
Just now getting rid of, just now sold one website, just now, have pieces of my past finally going away, and there's just this. And I don't know. This is just a reflection of me. Like I talk about all these different things, not because it's bad for the channel, to be honest. Like it's like I have that Joe Rogan approach. Like he just talks about everything because it's just him. And because I
Mhm.
didn't want to do multiple channels again, I didn't want to do, because I've been there, done that, and it is a lot. And that's why I ask a lot of folks how you juggle schedules, how you juggle those things, because I did not do it well. I be honest, and I think having different playlists and things like that work best for me. But I'm willing to know that there are things I do where I get like, it'll have, and things will grow oddly when your channel is structured the way mine is. So yeah, I look at a
Mhm.
video and it'll have like 20 views, but then I'll look at it like a month from now and it'll have like 300 views. And then I'll look at it like 6 or 8 months from now, it'll be like, 4,000 views, because they're pocketed. And I have viewers that have come along this massive journey interested in pieces of things. And it seems like it's weird because of that it'll take a minute, and then people will find it, and then then it goes. I don't know how to explain it. I did an X-Men rewatch or reaction, however you want to look at those videos, and out of the blue there'd be like the Gambit one would be the one for that month, and it would just, here's 200 views, just kind of would scale. Then you do like the ones that were before and after that one would still be stuck. I don't know why. You know what I mean? So I just kind of go along from that, tap into my past of experiences to try to have fun doing this, and that's led me to meet folks like you and MMM crowd and many others, and just do regular content as I can manage and have fun doing it. So yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been great doing this, and I got to get to know you a little bit better. Can't wait. I got to figure out how to get the Gourd kids on. That's the best. That would be the coolest follow-up ever. So, but yeah, again, folks, everything is in the description. Make sure you check that out. Join them on Mondays over on MMM. See this new content. Check out that meme stuff. I talk about a break for fun. So, until next time, folks, take care. Be blessed. I am Pops.